Good morning and welcome to Breathing for Life. It's Friday. I hope you've all had a good week. This morning I am joined by Brian Morrison. Brian, we had you on the show on episode 5 last week. Was it Friday as well?
It was, yeah, last Friday. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And you spoke to us about your backstory and how you got into breathing work. Do you want to give us a brief recap on that?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, well, it's like any story there's a kind of shortened version and there's a long version. But as I talked about it last week, I'll try to keep it nice and succinct. But yeah, I have a background in visual art and I teach visual art. And as part of that process, I was kind of exposed to, as many lecturers are, exposed to lots of young people. I've been teaching for almost 10 years now. So what I noticed was year on year, I was being confronted by more and more young people who were basically suffering really desperately from their mental health. So anxiety was really, really prevalent in these young people. And in art education, there's quite often a lot of conversational type things that we do. We sit around in seminars and discuss each other's work and ideas and these types of things. So what I would see is that there would be a year-on-year increase on the numbers of students who were really reluctant, or not even reluctant, but almost physically incapable of having a conversation in front of other people. And that to me was this, initially I was like, oh God, what's wrong with these people, But over time you start to realize that this is a direct response to kind of anxiety and poor mental health. And when I kind of invested some time into the university to try and work out, what can we do as staff to help these young people? Really, there isn't a great deal that we are kind of allowed to do simply because of a lack of training and lack of education around these types of things. So that left me feeling very frustrated. Whilst I might have been able to give them direction on their projects or, give them some historical art references, these types of things, I wasn't really able to help them with the fundamental issues that they were having. So that then I took it into my own hands to go out and kind of have a little look into the world of well-being, of these types of things, to try and understand a little bit more about what was happening. Why was there such an increase of poor mental health in young people? But also what was there available for me as a kind of lay person, not a doctor, not a psychiatrist, to try and help these people manage this stuff. So that led me on a journey into psychotherapy, into things like cognitive behavioral therapy, and starting to kind of learn and understand a little bit more about those things. And I spent quite a lot of time researching and working with therapists to try and understand, as I say, this kind of what was going on in people's minds. Why were we seeing this? What was there? Is there things that I could do to help? And over time, all of my research sort of led me to the same conclusion, which was that there is lots of cognitive therapy, so brain, conversational, talking type therapy that is required to help people deal and understand themselves and their issues and their emotions and their anxieties. But that also sort of has a certain limit. And what I found was that most people who had suffered some experience in their life that had led them to having very poor mental health would get to a kind of limit on their how helpful psychotherapy was for them. And that's not to say that it's not an incredibly powerful modality. It is. I totally believe that, and it's changed many people's lives. But there was a kind of a period of which these individuals would kind of get blocked, or they would get stopped, and they couldn't get beyond this point. And all of the research led to this was due to the fact that there was a disconnection between the mind and the body, so that we were kind of maintaining our past traumas, our past issues, our existing issues in our body. And there's no amount of talking that can shift that out of your body. So this led me to start to look at other practices that were connected to this idea of how do you release anxiety, trauma that's stored in the body? How can you get rid of this? Which took me on a path of body work, trying to understand the processes connected to releasing stress in the body through physical practices. But then what I was drawn to then was the practice of the Wim Hof method, which combined this cold immersion therapy, which again is very directly connected to us reconnecting with our own body, but also breath work, and this idea that breath work was this process that allowed us to go back into your body, to reconnect to our physical existence. And for me, that was the kind of turning point in my own relationship to understanding stress, mental health, anxiety, emotional disorders, all these types of things. And it also then led me to have to deal with my own situation, my own kind of past issues and these types of things. So it became what initially became a kind of almost a research journey in the way that I might research an art project into a kind of personal journey, which led me then to become a Wim Hof method instructor and then to start teaching these techniques and these processes to other people.
Do you think that one of the reasons why we're seeing such an increase in mental health issues, anxiety and everything is due to the way we live our lives now and how we can become so disconnected from ourselves, from nature, from the world around us?
Yeah, no question. As far as I'm concerned, that is absolutely the case. What I've learned on this journey is that we are essentially our physiology is essentially the same as it was, 10,000 years ago. And those humans that were living 10,000 years ago were living in a very, very different climate. So whilst our bodies are essentially the same, all of the surroundings are vastly, vastly different. And one of the biggest issues that we have, which doesn't necessarily seem like an issue, is convenience and comfort. And those two things cause problems for the body, which you wouldn't necessarily associate with. But over time, the body adapts to any given situation. So if you stop using parts of, stop using your legs, the muscles will stop functioning. The body will decide that if you're not using your legs, I'm not going to send energy there. I'm not going to, give energy away from other parts of the body that need it, the hearts and the lungs, all these kind of major organs. And it'll essentially just stop, your muscles will atrophy and this sort of thing. And this is sort of what's happening on a global scale. We're spending much too much time sitting around, being much more sedentary than we've ever been before. So we have a kind of a reduction of the physical activity of the body and an increase of the mental stimulation of the body. So we're essentially, as far as I'm concerned, we're out of balance. And if there's one thing that a healthy body needs, it's balance. It needs to find harmony. The body is designed to be in harmony, and it is designed to kind of find balance. We are the survivors of the best humans because the humans who didn't adapt, the humans who didn't manage to deal with their situation, they didn't survive. We are the ancestors, or our ancestors are those people, the bodies who were the strongest. So our bodies are essentially survival machines, and whenever they are not being used in that way, they suffer essentially. And this is one of the reasons why the Wim Hof method is has become so popular, because we are using the body. We are using the body to put it into mild stress situations, either through cold therapy or a deep conscious breathing exercises. These things are about putting the body into a mild form of stress. So certainly it's a very complex thing as to why people are suffering from their mental health now more than ever. And some people talk about it in that the fact that it's just become more evident that maybe we always suffered and these sort of things. And there's some evidence to suggest that might be true also. But if we look at the way in which we are being stimulated now, we are constantly stimulated. So whether that be through social media, whether we're on television, watching, on the internet, we're constantly on our phones. This is this constant stimulation. And stimulation in terms of the body can also exist in the body doesn't know whether you're looking at an Instagram post or you're looking at a lion that's coming to attack you necessarily. So what happens is all of the stimulation translates as stress into the body. So even we might be flicking through, our Instagram or Facebook posts or whatever, and we'll see something that will irritate us or upset us or whatever, and the body just soaks that up. And that's happening, literally hundreds, if not thousands of times a day. So this process of constant stimulation and lack of or decreasing of movement, of physical movement is, for me, is this kind of a terrible combination that's coming together to kind of disrupt how we live our lives.
I think it's so important what we consume, like social media wise, but also people I just can't watch really violent TV, or, people get obsessed about shows about murderers and stuff. And I'm like, why would you want to watch that? Like, you're absorbing that into your body. Like, and I think especially during this time, I found, when you're just feeling like, oh, I want to get out of the house. Like, we all get really down about lockdowns, but sitting at home consuming things about murder or just really dark things just won't make you feel any better. I'm not, I just want to watch comedy all the time.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, you could certainly put together a vast analysis of how television has shifted, or how entertainment, if we call it that, has shifted over, I don't know, since its creation, really. And I know less about this really, but that how those things affect us, they affect us, whether they are violent or sexualized or whatever. These things, we take on that experience. And again, there's a conversation around how well equipped are we to, how, does our body tell the difference between something that we see on TV and something that is happening in real life? Is there, are we still just consuming this stress, and is it going into the body, and how is it manifesting, and all of those things? So yeah, it's what we consume, what we take in is really important. And we tend basically to spend a lot of time thinking about what we eat and how often we drink water, but we tend less to think about maybe what we consume through television, through the internet, these sorts of things. And certainly one thing that we do not spend an awful lot of time thinking about, although the numbers are growing, is how well we are breathing. How is our breathing? How does it today? Is it shallow today? Is it deep today? How are we breathing? And the old quote goes, you'll last 3 weeks without food, 3 days without water, but only 3 minutes without air. And you think about that, and you think about, well, actually, there's a real priority list there, and we should be thinking about the air that we consume, and how we're breathing, and all of those sort of things, and how that affects the body. For me, is an incredibly important thing.
Brilliant. So we're going to go over to the live demo in a few minutes. But when we come back after it, you're going to talk about your approach with breathwork and how you've brought your creativity into the sessions that you hold as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we're unable to kind of do or sort of recreate the sort of sessions that I carry out, just from a kind of a technical issue, really, as much as anything else. But we'll talk a little bit more about it after the session, in terms of what I would normally do. But really, what I'm especially interested in is trying to find a way of breaking down some of the kind of barriers around breath work or meditation. And certainly whenever I was first introduced, or even before I kind of entered into this world of research and understanding this stuff, when I was presented with the idea of meditation, I had a very specific idea of what that was, kind of bald-headed Buddhist sitting on a mountain with his legs crossed, and that was not for me. I'm not that person. I had no relationship with that. I had no chance of me ever being able to kind of calm my mind enough to sit still for a period of time. That's not going to happen. So I think that is also the case in many ways for breath work and for breathing exercises, in that there is a kind of certain type of person, or a certain type of thing that happens for those people that are doing breath work. And what I try to do with my classes that I run each week is trying to get people out of that mindset, to try to change that mindset. And I do that in lots of different ways. And I work with all sorts of people. So, I work with MS patients. I also work with boxers. I work with sort of everything in between. There's a kind of vast a range of people that I work with. But the thing that I try that ties that together is this idea that we can go into our bodies if we allow ourselves to just kind of relax into these activities, or relax into this experience of breathing and reconnecting back to our bodies. And I try to do that using music and my voice and these kind of things that are familiar to people, that help get us out of our head a little bit and back into our bodies.
Brilliant. Amazing. So we're going to go over to the Facebook Live. So if anyone wants to join us and you haven't signed up already, the instructions are in the box in front of you. So I'll leave it over to you, Brian.
Thanks so much, Susie. All right, what would be really good, if you haven't got them already, would be to grab some headphones. As I mentioned to Susie, what we're going to try to do